Buying reactions to actual wrestling events? Do base cards still matter? What we see on social media and what's touted may not actually be what the market wants, and a lot more tidbits of useful information from the front line of selling wrestling cards. This is the Wrestling Card Market Watch for March 2023. What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. This month, I wanted to change things up just a little bit. Since I'm so heavily involved with my eBay store and transacting quite a bit of cards, I figured, hey, let's take a look at some stuff that I've actually seen as far as trends and what is selling, what people are spending their hard-earned money on. We hear and see a lot of thoughts and opinions and content across social media or podcasts or YouTube channels. And I don't want to say it's a loud minority, but I think a lot of times the things that people are preaching about, that are saying that are the most important cards in the hobby and this is going to sell for this much, it's not always the facts. So I figured, since I'm selling so much on a quantity standpoint, let's take a look back at last month's sales and see what kind of trends we're looking at. And keep in mind, while I'm talking about this, this is from the perspective of my eBay store only. Cards that have actually sold. Maybe some cards that haven't sold and why. Also keep in mind that most of the time my inventory in my store is sub $100 cards, and a lot of them. From a variety of different sectors of the hobby. You're not going to find a lot of like over $1,000 worth of cards in my store. So a lot of times on social media, when you see those big hobby headline cards, the black 1 of 1 or golds or some kind of rare auto or parallel or something, while those may sell for a huge amount, it's a lot harder to find the right buyer for that kind of card as opposed to, $1.50 cards or a $10 card. So with more quantity of sales, I figured it might be a little bit more of an accurate view of things. But also I wanted to say that, again, it's my store, so it may be skewed a little bit to the lower end, but I think the facts are still going to be the facts. So let's jump into it. Reactionary buying to wrestling events. Now I'm going to cheat just a little bit here and include the first day or two of April in with these sales. Reason being, it ties in with WrestleMania nights 1 and 2. Many people say that in the wrestling card space, reactionary buying, based on performance or a result, is just non-existent. And I couldn't disagree more with that statement. But maybe it's false, not in the way you think. See, I think when people look at reactionary buying, they're looking mainly at kind of what works in sports. Is this prospect getting called up to the Major League roster? Is this team going to the Super Bowl? Is this new rookie coming in going to be the next Tom Brady? So they look at it as, well, this athlete is going to perform this way, they're going to get promoted to this roster, this position, and the next thing you know, their cards are valuable. They've got the next Michael Jordan, the next Tom Brady, the next Hulk Hogan. And when you think about wrestling, you can think of who wins the championship, who's winning more, who's losing more, what's going up and down as far as that goes. Who's getting more TV time? How much are they in the general public's eye? And while some of that is true for sure with wrestling cards, what I'm seeing is a little bit different. I'm seeing more fandom and collector-based reactions. Let me explain. For example, this past WrestleMania weekend, we had tons of great talent on the show. And around that time, I was selling a lot of Dominic Mysterio, Rey Mysterio, Rhea Ripley, and some other names that were involved in that show. So we've established that people wanted the talent that was involved in the show. Some of them were winning, some of them were losing, but still they made an impact in the viewer's eye, right? But what cards were they buying of these names? Once again, it might not be what you think. And that leads to the next talking point in today's video, which is base cards still matter. And this is not my opinion at all. This is what I'm seeing in sales. When the market speaks on a mass volume like this, it must be true. That's right, base cards. The cards that many people claim nobody wants. The cards that people just rifle through in breaks, and many times they don't even include those with your break. Or how about the cards that people use as protection to sandwich that top loader in? Yes, base cards. Regardless of what anybody, including myself, has ever said about base cards, they still matter in the general public collecting view. I think it's honestly this narrative that's been built up, and you can blame me for this, you can blame anybody else for this as well for talking about it, but sometimes I think the content creators or talking heads lean more towards that value perspective. Or maybe it has nothing to do with value and it's just that rarity. I want the out of 10 or I don't want it at all. I want the 1 of 1 or I don't want that card at all. And if you're looking at base cards from that commodity standpoint, sure, they're maybe not going to be worth a ton anytime soon. That's okay. Not every single card has to be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars to be important to somebody within the hobby, someone that's actually collecting these things because they like the talent, they like the image. As I stated, a lot of those names that were featured in WrestleMania were selling really well on my eBay store, but they were all base cards that were selling. I even have some parallels or numbered stuff of some of these talents. Nobody wanted those. They wanted the base cards. They're still set builders, super collectors, player collectors. Some people just want as many cards as possible of their favorite superstars, or their favorite company, or their favorite teams or faction. And they don't care what those cards are. It could be a one of one, or it could be a beat up base card. Not to mention, base cards continue to be the perfect entry point for anybody. You want to have your children start collecting? Give them some base cards. Are you brand new to the hobby but you don't want to break the bank to get into wrestling cards because you're trying to learn? Start off with base cards. But as we move into the next topic in this video, even with base cards, we have to stop and ask a question. Does the popularity of certain superstars, what the wrestling community and social media thinks, does that actually translate into sales? Popularity versus reality. You know how in sports cards and like Pokemon and some other things, we always have those hobby headline cards that transcend into pop culture. And of course those mainstream publications that, yeah, this is a cool card, but let's look at how much it actually sold for. That's all we care about. Well, we do have that in wrestling cards as well, just on a lot smaller scale. Let's talk about it. You know those cards out there that are rare, or maybe they're not as rare, but everybody wants a copy in their collection? Cards that everybody claims to want. Hogan 82, Flair 82, Hogan 85, pick your name, Prism Gold, the list goes on and on. Yet the funny thing is, many times when it comes to acquiring these cards or setting that goal to go out and get these cards, a lot of collectors, they just don't want to pay the piper. And this could be for several different reasons. I think overall economics does have a huge effect on general spending that's not necessities. It could also be the styles and the tastes of people's collecting changing. Maybe they got into box breaks, maybe they got too underwater on some big time cards, yet they still want to collect, so they get out of the higher end and they go for the lower end parallels or the base cards, or something that's a little bit more affordable that maybe they can get more cards of for their collection of the talents they like. But it is an interesting topic to discuss. From my experience on selling on eBay the last few months, people are buying a ton of wrestling cards of names you maybe would not expect. When you look on social media and you look at the cards that people are buying or selling, are you seeing a lot of Lenny Lane? Are you seeing a lot of the Nitro Girls? No, probably not. Most of these names are not main eventers. They're not in the public eye. Most of these cards aren't rare or scarce. Most of these names are not in modern product. Meanwhile, some of my slabs or some of my more rare cards, they're just sitting on the shelves, so to speak, in the eBay store. Tons of watchers on them, and I'll occasionally get an offer that's like a tenth of the value. You guys know how those lowball offers go. That's just part of it. And sure, my pricing within the store on some of these more rare, higher-end cards, yeah, you can price it at whatever you want, but I'm always willing to negotiate down. I'll do deals off of eBay with eBay items for trade. There's just all kinds of ways that I like to get deals done. I'm not always just stuck on a certain price on something unless it's a very rare card that's like my PC card and I can kind of price it at whatever. You know those cards you don't want to get rid of unless you get life-changing money? That's what I'm talking about. But if I've got a $100 card of, let's just say, Rhea Ripley, Otto, or Seth Rollins or somebody like that, I'm usually always willing to negotiate down based on how much people are buying. But that's the thing. People just seem to not want to spend large amounts of money on single cards based on my sales experience within the store. And like I said, I have a ton of lower-end stuff, but I also have all-stars. I've got autographs. I've got rare gold stuff. You name it, it's been in the store probably. I think we're just kind of at this point currently where people want everything for nothing, which wasn't the case during the boom we saw a couple years ago when wrestling cards really took off. During that time, I sold a lot more higher end stuff, like I'm sure a lot of people did. It was a different time then, but it seems like people were more willing to spend for those high-end cards than they are now. It's not great for sellers or people that are running a business or making a living off this. That being said, there is absolutely still opportunity with graded cards and a little bit more rare cards. Let's focus on the grading in the next segment. There is still money to be made with grading. With the huge glut and influx of graded cards that we've seen coming back from these grading companies after the whole shutdown with the pandemic, and then combine that with overall pricing really going down in pretty much all segments of the hobby and the world, many people in the hobby think we're in the junk slab era. And while that definitely is true for some things, I don't think it's something you can just say is a blanket statement within the hobby as a whole. Grading has always been a hot button topic within the hobby. And despite the concept of grading being a little bit newer of a concept to wrestling card collectors, I think most collectors have kind of latched onto grading and see what it is, the value it adds, how it protects your cards, the way it displays, and I would say the majority of people like graded cards that collect wrestling. But despite all that, there is still an opportunity to make some money with graded cards. Let's talk about some examples that I've had sell in my store. 1982 Wrestling All-Stars, Ted DiBiase, PSA Authentic Auto, $110. 2020 Topps Finest WWE Austin Theory Rookie Card, PSA 10, $100. 1995 Cards WCW Main Event Stunning Steve Austin, PSA 7, $75. 1995 BBM Hayabusa, PSA 9, Rookie card, 75 bucks. And some of you may be thinking, Zhan, you only got one PSA 10, you only gemmed one card. You wasted your time, bro. You wasted your money. Or they may be saying, you're crazy, you undersold those. You're tanking the market, bro. That last comment was probably for that person who's trying to sell the same card on their eBay store or their whatnot or their story sale, and they've got it priced way, way too high. But let's break down my mental process and monetary process with these specific cards and show you how I was able to turn a profit. Every card that you saw that I sold was either in a dollar box or purchased in a collection bulk buy. I sent all of them in different bulk subs, so I was able to keep the grading cost down to between $10 and $15 a card. I also will say I had most of these priced for more than what they sold for, but as I already stated earlier in this video, I am always willing to negotiate with reasonable people. Being successful selling cards is all about margin. Whether it's a $1.50 card or a $1,000 card. Having a little bit of familiarity with comps, knowing your fees, knowing your entry cost on the specific item, knowing your shipping rates, and everything else that goes into general cost associated with selling any type of card or product. All of those things you have to know, or else a lot of times you can get burned. And in my opinion, a lot of times I'm going to talk about this, I've talked about it before, but probably on another podcast or another video. A lot of times if you have stale inventory, it's best to just let that stuff go. Let that money go into your PC. Let that money work for you in another way than just sitting there and trying to squeeze every little penny out of what you have of value. Sure, you might take a loss on something. So what? Move along. But the fact of the matter is that cards are still selling in grades that are not 10s, albeit for less, but they are selling. And grading is definitely still a factor no matter what anyone says. And if making money is your thing, to run a business, to start a new PC, whatever it's for, if that's your thing, grading is still very important. I did a video recently about how I pretty much had a PSA fail and got a lot of grades that I wasn't really sure of. And I talked about the transparency in grading, and so have many other people. But I don't lose sleep over that stuff. I just look at it as a tool to get things authenticated, and it makes it easier to sell things if you have duplicates or you just decide, hey, this card doesn't really fit my PC anymore. But maybe the best part out of everything I've talked about today is that there continues to be more people coming into the wrestling card space. And they're coming in at all levels. They're buying slabs, they're buying base cards, all the stuff in between, and all the different ways they're collecting. I love to see it. That's why I start creating content. That's why I engage with the community. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, even if it was a little bit different. But with that being said, we're going to change things up again with the Wrestling Card Market Watch when we do the video for April next month. But you're going to have to tune in to check out what we're going to do with that video. If you enjoyed today's video and it brought you some value, hit that subscribe button, give me a like, spread the word about this YouTube channel, and of course about wrestling cards. And before you get out of here, check the links in the show notes to all of the ways you can help show your support for my content, links to the eBay store that I talked about a lot today, links to the podcasts I'm involved with, links to Patreon, my social media links, and much more. Thanks to each and every one of you that took the time out of your day to stop and watch this video, especially if you made it this far. And until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. There's a lot of great stuff in the archives, guys. Go check it out. We'll see you next time.